Ciao a tutti, come state oggi? Spero benissimo. Benvenuti o bentornati al Learn Italian for Travel. Sono Danielle. Hello, everybody. How is everyone doing today? I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to Learn Italian for Travel. I am Danielle. Today's podcast is called I nostri parenti italiani, our Italian relatives. And I'm going to tell the story of a trip that I took with my two kids and my parents. And my parents had never been to Italy, neither had my kids, so it was the first time for all of them. And we got to meet the relatives of my dad, who lived in the small town where his father, my grandfather, was born in Tuscany, called Bolzano. So it was a really amazing experience to connect with so many relatives, and my nono hadn't been back to Italy in many years. He had been writing letters back and forth, but one of my dad's cousins had actually gone to California, and she had visited them, but we had never met them. So the story is brief. I don't get into all of the things. Maybe I'll tell another story about everything that we saw that day in Bolzano, because there's so much to tell. But the story today is literally about it's about the background of the trip a little bit. But the picture that you'll see on Instagram, Learn Italian for Travel, is the moment where we arrived at my dad's cousin Roberto's house, and he's trying to figure out who we are. And it was just a very exciting moment. I love this picture because you can see on all of our faces just the joy, the excitement, the satisfaction of finding the house, and being brought there by our taxi driver Mario, who I'll talk about in the story. So I'm going to read the story in Italian, and then I'll translate it into English. And go to my Instagram, Learn Italian for Travel with the number 4, and you can see the picture that I'm describing in this story. And then I put a few other pictures as well of the time with family in Bolzano. And like I said, there's so much to tell about this story. If you can understand when I'm speaking, I actually have a great uncle who's in the process of being made into a saint. Padre Damiano, and so I'll do one of the podcasts just talking about him and describing the sweet little town of Bolzano where he grew up and where my nonno lived until he was 9 years old. Allora, cominciamo. 11 anni fa ho fatto un viaggio in Italia con i miei 2 figli e i miei genitori. È stata la loro prima volta lì e io ero molto contenta di pianificare tutto. Siamo atterrati a Milano, ci siamo rimasti solo una notte e poi abbiamo preso un treno fino a Padova. Siccome avevo studiato a Padova anni prima, mi piace molto la città. Ho tanti bei ricordi e avevo amici che volevo andare a trovare. Dopo la sosta a Padova ci siamo fermati in Emilia-Romagna per un paio di giorni per vedere una buona amica che avevo conosciuto mentre studiavamo insieme all'università in California. Poi abbiamo preso un altro treno per Lucca. Il soggiorno a Lucca era molto importante perché sarebbe stata la prima volta che avremmo conosciuto i nostri parenti. Mio nonno Enzo è nato in un piccolo paese fuori Lucca che si chiama Bolzano nel 1920. Sua mamma è morta quando aveva 9 anni e poi lui si è trasferito negli Stati Uniti subito dopo. Anche se lui era partito molti anni prima, c'era molta famiglia che è rimasta a Bolzano. Prima di partire per l'Italia, mio nonno ci aveva dato una busta con l'indirizzo di suo parente Roberto. Allora noi andremo a Bolzano cercando la casa di Roberto. Il giorno della nostra avventura abbiamo camminato verso le grandi porti che circondano Lucca e ho cercato un taxi. Subito ho conosciuto un tassista napoletano che si chiamava Mario. Noi cinque siamo saliti sulla sua macchina e abbiamo cominciato il viaggio in auto di 45 minuti fino a Bolzano. Mentre Mario guidava, gli raccontavo la storia di mio nonno che era partito per gli Stati Uniti 80 anni prima. Ho detto a Mario anche come i miei nonni si sono conosciuti durante la Seconda Guerra Mondiale in Lussemburgo. Lui mi ascoltava attentamente. Gli ho parlato di mio grande zio Pio, che è cresciuto a Bolzano. Pio era un prete e il suo nome religioso che ha scelto era Padre Damiano. Quando ho detto che Padre Damiano stava per diventare un santo, Mario mi ha guardato con gli occhi grandissimi e ha fatto il segno della croce. Dopo aver saputo questo fatto di mio zio santo, Mario aveva ancora più energia e voglia di aiutarci. Siamo arrivati a Bolzano e lui ha fermato la macchina fuori un grande casa che corrispondeva all'indirizzo sulla nostra busta. Abbiamo suonato il campanello e un uomo calvo è uscito dalla sua casa. Siccome mio padre non parla italiano, mi sono presentata e ho detto che Enzo Di Pietro era mio nonno e il padre di mio padre che era accanto a me. Ho dato la busta con il suo nome e il suo indirizzo scritto di sopra, dicendo «Ecco». Quell'uomo ha guardato la busta, ci ha guardato di nuovo e poi ha fatto un grande sorriso. «Piacere, sono Roberto», ci ha detto. Ho risposto «Anche mio papà si chiama Roberto». La prima foto che ho messo su Instagram è di questo momento gioioso. Mario era molto felice che ci aveva aiutato a trovare la nostra famiglia. Tutti noi eravamo molto contenti, che si vede sulle facce nella foto. Abbiamo passato una bellissima giornata conoscendo tutti i nostri parenti a Bolzano e vedendo il bello e piccolo paese. La fine. Va bene, now I'm going to translate the story into English. 11 years ago, I took a trip to Italy with my 2 kids and my parents. It was their first time there, and I was really happy to plan everything. We landed in Milan, we stayed there only one night, and then we took a train to Padova. Because I had studied in Padova many years before, I really like this city. I have a lot of great memories, and I had friends that I wanted to go see there. After our stay in Padova, we stopped in Emilia-Romagna for a few days to see a good friend that I had met while we were studying together at the university in California. Then we took another train to Lucca. The stay in Lucca was really important because it would be the first time that we were going to meet our Italian relatives. My nonno, my grandfather Enzo, was born in a small town outside of Lucca that's called Bolzano in 1920. His mom died when he was 9 years old, and then he moved to the United States right afterwards. Also, even though he had left many years before, there was a lot of family that stayed in Bolzano. Before we left for Italy, my nonno gave us an envelope with an address of one of his relatives, Roberto. So we would go to Bolzano looking for the house of Roberto. The day of our adventure, we walked towards the big doors in Lucca that wrap around the city, and I looked for a taxi. Right away, I met a nice taxi driver who was from Naples that was named Mario. So the 5 of us got into his car, and we started the trip in the car about 45 minutes to Bolzano. While Mario was driving, I told him the story of my nonno, who had left for the United States 80 years before. I told Mario also how my grandparents had met during the Second World War in Luxembourg. He listened to me really attentively. I told him about my great-uncle, Pio, who grew up in Bolzano. Pio was a priest, and his religious name that he chose was Father Damiano. When I told Mario that Father Damiano was about to become a saint, Mario looked at me with huge eyes, and he made the sign of the cross. After knowing this fact about my saint uncle, Mario had even more energy and desire to help us. We arrived in Bolzano, and he stopped the car in front of a big house that matched the address on our envelope. We rang the bell, and a bald man came out of the house. Because my dad doesn't speak Italian, I presented myself and I said that Enzo Di Pietro was my grandfather and the father of my father, who was standing next to me. I gave the envelope with his name and address written on top saying, "Here it is." The man looked at the envelope, looked at us again, and then he gave a big smile. "Pleased to meet you. I am Roberto," he told us. I responded, "My father is also named Roberto." The first picture that I put on Instagram is this joyful moment. Mario was so happy that he had helped us to find our family. All of us were really happy, and you can see it on the faces of everybody in the photo. We spent a beautiful day in Bolzano, getting to know everybody, all of our family, and also seeing the beautiful and small town. The end. So I didn't get into it too much in the story in Italian, but I'll just say this in English. I am the only person in my family that speaks Italian, besides my Italian grandparents. So my dad and his 3 brothers, they never learned Italian while they were growing up, just because it was the time in the United States where it wasn't encouraged to speak the language of the immigrants. And so his parents wanted them to learn English. And so that's all they spoke at home. My grandparents spoke to themselves, to each other in Italian, but they didn't teach their kids. So when I was growing up, I wanted to study Italian to connect with my roots, and then ended up doing a study abroad in Italy. And although some of my siblings have taken an Italian class here or there, and my dad even took my Italian class, and my mother too, I really am the only one in the family that delved in and studied it and is able to speak it fluently. And so this moment that we went to Bolzano and we were able to meet all of the family members, and literally everybody came out in the town and opened up their houses and gave us something to eat and drink, and we toured the cemetery. We got to see my nono's mother's grave and his grandmother's grave, and everybody was just, it was like open arms. We're family. We've known each other forever. And it felt, to me, that was the reason why I learned Italian. So, I mean, I've enjoyed, obviously, my time teaching Italian and everything that I've been able to do Italian. But I think the real reason, the most important reason that I learned it was to bridge the gap between our Italian relatives and my family here that doesn't speak Italian. And so it felt so good that day to be able to translate everything. So they would say something to me, and then I would say it to my dad in English, and then he would say it to me, and then I would say it back to them in Italian. And it was tiring, but it was just beautiful. And I felt so proud to be able to have that significant role, really, in, like I said, bridging the two languages, and for the fluidity of the communication. So I hope that you enjoyed this story, and I'll be back with another short story in a couple of weeks. Va bene? Allora, buon ringraziamento, happy Thanksgiving, e statemi bene. Ciao!